What's cracking, guys? This is Bruce Matson, senior staff writer from Dynasty League Football.com, and I'm here again to talk about some DEVY prospects. We're going to go over some performances from last week, along with some prospects you need to pay attention to ongoing into the future. We're going to start things off with the quarterback position. Hendon has not received much publicity this year. However, he's looked good. Last week against Kentucky, he completed 15 of his 20 pass attempts for 316 yards and 5 touchdowns. On the year, he's completed 65.4% of his passes. And from watching him on the field, you can tell he's got a gun on him. He can fit the ball in the tight windows. He's got good touch. And I expect his value in the draft community for next year's draft, because he should be out for the 2022 NFL draft. This is his fourth season in college football. He should see a spike in his value. He should get some chatter this offseason as the season continues to progress, as we finish this year in 2021. Going back to another quarterback who will be in the 2022 NFL draft. Looks like he'll be the top guy. That's Matt Corral. He had a big week last week against Liberty, passing for 324 yards and a touchdown, completing 74.04% of his passes. And this dude's got a rocket for an arm. He's gritty, and he has deep ball accuracy, probably the best arm in college football, and he makes plays happen. He also is mobile, so he can get you those yards from the run game. In that game, he faced off against Malik Willis, who's also one of the top quarterbacks in the 2022 draft class, and everyone's excited about him. I'm excited about him. I look at him as a top shelf developmental quarterback prospect, where if you handle him with care, he could be one of the best quarterbacks in college football, at least from a fantasy sense. If he's handled with care at the start of his NFL career, once he gets drafted, there's a lot of potential with him. The potential's through the moon. Against Ole Miss, he threw 3 interceptions. However, Liberty's outmatched against Ole Miss. They're not going to be able to compete with them. They're not going to look that good. But Malik Willis, he can make the big plays happen. He can really amaze you with his arm talent. He's got a little bit of mobility. He can thread the needle a little bit. One thing that you want to look at is inconsistencies. His play from play to play isn't always there. If you want a good look at Malik Willis, in the search bar here on YouTube, type in QB School and look up his game against Virginia Tech and how they go over his highlights from that game, because it will give you a good indication of what he's about, how he looks like when he's on the ball, and then also the downside of his play. But Malik Willis is a very good quarterback prospect who will be drafted in the first round this year. Also, another first-round quarterback that we're going to talk about, and he's definitely going to be in the first round. He's earning it week by week, and that's Kenny Pickett. We've talked about him before. 416 yards and 3 touchdowns against Duke. Also, 57 yards on the ground and another touchdown. His draft stock is increasing. I wouldn't be surprised if he does develop into the first quarterback drafted. He is the QB1 in Mel Kiper's recent mock. I kind of have a thing for Matt Corral over him, but I wouldn't be surprised if an NFL team would rather have Pickett. He does have a good arm on him. He can extend the play a little bit. He has some deep ball accuracy. He has some good touch. He's a little bit gritty. He does some good things on the field. Is he an elite passer? That's something that we just got to check out and see for the long term, but he does check some boxes. He does do some good things. He has earned an increase in his draft capital. He's another quarterback that you need to be on the lookout for the 2022 NFL draft, and he's been improving as the season goes on. Now we're going to move forward to the running backs, and I don't know if we can go a week without talking about Kenneth Walker. No matter how Michigan State does, whether it's losing their first game to Purdue or beating Michigan, he always has, or what it feels like, a big performance. Here, he rushed for 146 yards and 1 touchdown against Purdue. He has 343 yards and 6 touchdowns in the last 2 games. Of course, that was a blow-up game against Michigan 2 weeks ago. But Kenneth Walker, what I like about him is his field vision when he's approaching the line of scrimmage. He has excellent contact balance and an overall good feel of the momentum of the defenders around him. I look for him to continue to increase his draft capital going forward because he is just blowing up this season. I don't think Michigan State would be this good this year without him because he's been so good on the field. Also, another running back that we don't really hear as much often, but he was a DEVY dandy once he first hit the college scene as a freshman. That's Breece Hall. And his stock dropped for no apparent reason. There are some concerns about his athleticism, his burst, his long speed, but when he's on the field, he makes things happen. Last week against Texas, he rushed for 136 yards, 2 touchdowns. He looked better than David Montgomery once he took the field at Iowa State. David Montgomery was the incumbent there, and once Breece Hall took over the reins as a true freshman, it looked like an upgrade. And a lot of people like David Montgomery coming out of college, but Breece Hall does have some good things in his prospect profile. He projects as a 3-down back. He's physical, he's shifty, and he's going to be one of the top rookie selected rookie drafts this offseason. He's going to be one of the first running backs selected. He can also deliver the boom at the point of contact. He's a very physical runner. He's a very physical run blocker as well. And really, he's just one of these running backs that gets the job done. And one thing to note, when it comes to these players who were like DEVY dandies in the early stages of their career, and then you kind of see a little bit of a fall off, nothing major, but you're thinking about guys like A.J. Brown, who was like a top tier asset early stage of their collegiate career. DeAndre Swift, who held that position up until about draft time, and then you saw a little sink because of Clyde Edwards-Helaire and other players getting more bump in value. A guy like Breece Hall could see an increase in value once he hits the NFL level because he's gonna just blossom the same way he did when he came out as a freshman. We saw that with DeAndre Swift this year, A.J. Brown. So these DEVY dandies who were very productive early on in their career, who are just go silent in value, they could come back later on during the early stages of their NFL career because we've seen that recently. Just the market is just overshadowing them with these newer prospects that are coming by because they're the shiny new toy, but Breece Hall is still a very good running back prospect. Speaking of young running back prospects, I need to give you a young horse for the week. That way you got somebody to look forward to, and I'm going to talk about 4-star freshman from Wisconsin, Braelon Allen. He rushed for 129 yards and a touchdown against Rutgers last week. 5 100-yard performances in a row. He's been productive. He's got size. He's got moves. He's shifty. He's got speed. And I look for him to see a big increase in value as the season goes and into the offseason. I feel like there's going to be a lot of people chatting him up as he gets more exposure, as the market looks past what this season has done and realize that Braelon Allen is a very good running back. He's a guy that you need to keep your eye on. He's going to be in the 2024 NFL draft class, so there's some time for him to work through his collegiate career. Now let's funnel our way over to the wide receivers, and I don't know if there's a week that I cannot talk about David Bell, but David Bell is a baller, one of the top wide receivers in college football, should be one of the top wide receivers in the 2022 NFL draft class. It might be the best one in the 2022 NFL draft class. There was a period this season where he was being slept on, but he blew up against Iowa a few weeks ago, helping the Boilermakers knock down that team, one of the top teams in the nation. I think they were ranked like number 3 or something like that at the time, maybe even 2. But now he helped Purdue knock down Michigan Michigan State, catching 11 balls for 217 yards and a touchdown. This is his 15th 100-yard game of his career. He made this play along the sideline where he pushed the defender out of the bounds, and the guy just slid on his back, but he kept his feet in the play and then moved upfield. That's a highlight that you want to look up. But right now, though, he has a 33.52% market share of produced passing production. There's not a game that goes by that he does not make an incredible highlight reel play. He can make those contested catches. He can climb the ladder and make those tough grabs. He's got good footwork. He can run the routes. He can sell his routes. He can not tip off his routes. There's nothing in his repertoire that screams that this guy has many red flags. He's a very good wide receiver. He's been productive since a freshman. Even with sharing the field with Wan'Dale Moore for a little bit, David Bell's a player that you're going to want from the 2022 NFL Draft. I guarantee you that. And for the 2023 NFL Draft, a wide receiver that you're going to want to look for, it's Jaxon Smith-Njigba from Ohio State. He had his breakout game last week against Nebraska. Garrett Wilson was out of the lineup, but Njigba took advantage of that, catching 15 balls for 240 yards, setting a Ohio State record with just 15 catches. Right now, he leads Ohio State with 888 receiving yards. He also has 4 touchdowns. He's outproducing Chris Olave. Garrett Wilson's down a game, but he's still got more production. He has a 27.97% market share of Ohio State's passing production. That's usually something you don't see from an Ohio State wide receiver, is a market share that high, because they usually have a lot of wide receivers in the offense, and that's something that you shouldn't expect from a sophomore wide receiver who's sharing the field with wide receivers like Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson. This is letting you know that Jaxon Smith-Njigba can run with the big dogs, the top wide receivers in college football. Remember, he's a 5-star prospect from the 2022 recruiting class. We were expecting big things from him coming out of high school. Against Nebraska last year, he made that incredible tiptoe catch that generated a lot of buzz. Now he's just building upon that. I look for him to have a huge season next year as he develops into the main guy, the main passing threat for this Ohio State offense. Staying with the 2023 NFL draft class, another wide receiver we want to look forward to. I've talked about him before, but if you missed that episode, we're going to talk about him now, and that's Quentin Johnson from TCU. And the man's a baller. Caught 142 yards and a touchdown against Baylor. This was the third 100-yard game of his season. He has a 26.84% market share of the passing production. He also broke out last year as a freshman, so we got an early breakout age on this guy, and he can make plays downfield. He's strong at the catch points, and he's got some size on him. He is going to give you a different dynamic compared to those shifty wide receivers that we've been getting out of the draft. And again, he's another one of these wide receivers who consistently makes big plays happen, and there's not a week that goes by, it feels like, that he's not showering social media with this top highlight reel play of him just mossing a defender. Let's reverse back to the 2022 NFL draft here. I got one more wide receiver I want to talk about, and that's Wan'Dale Robinson from Kentucky. Formerly from Nebraska, he had a cup of coffee there, but eventually transferred to Kentucky, and he's been balling out this year. Last week against Tennessee, he had 166 yards and 1 touchdown. He has 811 yards and 6 touchdowns on the season, and he has been taking advantage of every opportunity. He's been very productive. He has a 42.35% market share of Kentucky's passing production. This is against SEC competition, and he looks the part. He's quick, he's shifty, he's got ball skills, and I just wish he would have been in this situation from the jump, because the nation would have known by now how great of an asset he is. But I look for him to come out this year and be one of the wide receivers in this class who consistently builds draft capital going forward as people start looking back at what he did during this year, because he's been having a monster season here in 2021. Well, that's all I got for you today. Let me know which players you're looking at in DEVY. Who do you want from the 2022 NFL draft class. And I'll be back with you next week talking some DEVY. I want to thank you for watching the show. Stick with me, and I'll catch you next time.